Okay, what is a good cover crop mix after wheat? How does it compare to double crop soybeans? I love this question. I love this one because the best time to plant a cover crop, in my opinion, is July and August. Particularly, towards the end of July, first part of August, we can still use our warm season things, which, like cowpeas and sun hemp and sorghums and millets, things like this that your soils probably almost never see. But we can also put the cool season things in. I can have some radishes in there. I can have some turnips in there. I can have different things. So we have the ability to really have the maximum amount of diversity in that time frame, and that matches up really well for coming in after wheat. So what's the best cover crop mix to plant? Well, that really depends on what your goals are. If you're trying to feed livestock, that's going to be a little bit different mix. If you're trying to suppress weeds, that's going to be a little different mix. If you're trying to max out how much nitrogen you can fix, again, that's going to be a little bit different type of a mix. It may have a lot of the same species in it, but the percentages and the ratios of the species in the mix could vary quite a bit based on what your goals are. We have, take sun hemp, for example. Sun hemp is a tropical legume. It's only going to grow with really warm temperatures. And so you can really only plant that June, July, maybe the first part of August. But, we've seen sun hemp get 6 feet tall and produce 150, 160 pounds of nitrogen in 60 days. But only if you're getting it planted right away after wheat to take advantage of all those heat units that you have during that time frame. Cowpeas can do some similar things. There's just a lot of benefits that can happen after wheat. How does it compare to double crop beans? Well, again, that's a great question. It will compare really good to 15 to 20 bushel beans. It may not compare as well if you're growing 40 to 45 bushel double crop beans. And again, you're not going to know what kind of beans you're going to grow, until the season kind of happens. We don't typically have enough growing season here in Nebraska, growing season or moisture, to double crop beans after wheat. So I'm not as familiar with this concept as, some of the customers that we work with. But I do know this, and many of you know Dave Brandt. You've probably heard some of his talks. I know that Dave no longer plants any double crop beans. He calls them greedy beans because he thinks that trying to get that second cash crop is showing that you're maybe a little bit greedy and trying to extract as much as you can from the soil, because Dave likes to use that window of opportunity after he harvests wheat to set himself up to grow a really good corn crop. So he's growing these big multi-species diverse mixes, growing all this nitrogen, growing all this weed control, all this biomass to suppress weeds. And so he doesn't get income off the beans, but he also uses very few inputs to grow a really good corn crop the next year. So if he can save a couple $100 in inputs for the corn crop the next year, he's essentially offsetting the lost income for what he could have got with the double crop beans. So again, it's hard to give a definitive answer. My suggestion to you would be, if you've got a 100-acre wheat field and you've never done this before, I would plant 50 acres to a cover crop, and I would plant 50 acres to double crop beans. And then I would plant corn on that whole field the next year and let the corn tell you. You won't know the financial numbers until that next crop, so you can see how things performed after that. But if you don't try at least some cover crop, you'll never know, and you'll be asking the same questions again next year that you're asking this year. So if you've got that opportunity, I wouldn't necessarily do the entire farm if you're not comfortable with it, but I also would make sure I did something so that I could learn as I went. And again, if there's a nice group of people on the call here. If there's multiple people doing this, there's 3 or 4 people that have wheat and they're interested in trying something like this. Try 3 or 4 different mixes, and then go and tour each other's farms and learn from each other, so that you have the ability to see multiple mixes, even though you only had to purchase and plant one of them.